How are you? My name is Novianti. I'm a third semester student of Siliwangi University in English Education Department. As you can see from my outfit, today I'm ready to give you a lesson. Oh, what will we study about? Are you curious? Let's just begin our lesson then. Let me ask you, what comes first in your mind when you hear fairy tales? Wonderland? Fiction creatures? Cinderella? Of course, Cinderella is part of fairy tales. It's one of the example of very famous fairy tales. Who doesn't know Cinderella, right? But can you mention other fairy tales that you know? You can answer it in the comment box below. Alright, Miss D, that's what you can call me with. So why we are talking about fairy tales? Aren't we going to have a lesson? Exactly! We're going to study about fairy tales. So, what is fairy tales? A fairy tale is a story often intended for children. Yeah, basically fairy tales are stories for kids, right? So they can sleep well at night or behave good. And fairy tales features fictional wondrous characters such as elves, fairies, wizards, and many other characters. And actually, fairy tales often traditional. It means that many fairy tales are passed down from one storyteller into another storyteller before it is written into a text or book. The examples of fairy tales are Beauty and the Beast, Thumbelina, Cinderella that I have mentioned before, and many other fairy tales. You know, fairy tales doesn't always in written form because sometimes fairy tales are only stories that created by your parents with their imagination. But is it important to learn about fairy tales? Yeah, it's important because fairy tales are basically full of imagination, and imagination helps us to explore our mind, and we can mix things between supernatural and reality to be together, so we can find another possibilities and to create something new, something that the world doesn't have before. Then let's talk about fairy tales characteristics. The first one is fairy tales mostly begin with once upon a time or long time ago, something like that. For example, once upon a time there is a beautiful princess who lived in the castle. And then the second one is fairy tales happen in the long ago. That's why fairy tales, text, audio, or even video are using past tense in it. Then, fairy tales have clearly defined good characters and evil characters. Of course, there is always good characters and bad characters in the fairy tales, right? Always. And the next one is fairy tales have a problem that need to be solved. Of course, most of fairy tales, all of them have a problem. The main character have problems, right? That have to be solved. So that's what makes fairy tales are interesting. There is conflict, there is problem solving, there is hard work from the main characters to solve their problems. And fairy tales have happy endings, like they all live happily ever after. Most of them, but actually there is a truth that some fairy tales doesn't have happy ending. It has dark endings. You can Google it, dark endings of fairy tales. Now let's take a look at one example of fairy tales that I found on internet. It's from storyberries.com, and the title of the fairy tale is The Picky Prince, the Princess, and the Peanut by Andrea Cogs-Marek. There once was a rather picky prince. Do you know what picky means? Because he was so picky, he was finding it harder than hard to find the perfect princess. Wow. She must be clever and very, very sensitive. And like the same things as me, he told the king and the queen. Clever and sensitive? The queen asked, for she was now very fed up with her son. What is fed up? None of the princesses suit them at all. She must be sensitive and like the same thing as me, the prince said again. Wow, very into character. The king and the queen had invited plenty of princes, but there was always something wrong with them. Too tall, too small, talks too much, doesn't talk at all, and doesn't like the things I like. Nothing ever seemed right. Yeah. He's too picky, right? But one stormy night, things change. There was a loud banging at the castle door. What is banging? Let me in, please. I'm a princess whose car has broken down. The king let the princess in. What a mess she was. Her hair was wet, her dress was soaked, her shoes were muddy, she had oil stains on her hands. She really was quite a fright. Yeah, messy, right? The queen frowned. Are you sure you are a princess? They invited her in anyway. Of course. Sorry about my messy look, but I am driving in the princess rally and my car broke down just outside your castle. The princess rally? The queen asked. I've never heard about it. The princess smiled and rubbed her wet hair with a towel. Alright, it's still a lot of stories here. I'm not going to read them. You can read it by yourself, and I will provide the link on the description box. And of course, as almost fairy tales exist, it has a happy ending. So the princess and the prince got married, of course. Storyberries.com. There you can find a lot of excellent, wonderful fairy tales from awesome authors, and it sometimes have, fantastic illustration like I have read before. Or if you are tired of seeing text, you can just watch it in English Fairy Tales YouTube channel. Here, I will provide the link, of course, in the description box. So, how is it? It's quite fun, right, to learn about fairy tales, since fairy tales have a lot of wonderful story plot and characters. And from fairy tales, you can also learn a lot of things such as new vocabulary and pronunciation if you try to read them out loud and record it and hear and listen to it. And you can find out where is your weaknesses. Okay, one final task, or you can call it a challenge too. I want you to go to storyberries.com and find the story of the Picky Prince, the princess and the peanut, and then answer these questions. After that, you can share the answers on your social media and tag me. Or you can write it in the comment box so I can check it out after this. Okay. Alright guys, it's really good to teach you, even though it's not really smooth, of course. We're still learning, okay? You are still learning, I'm still learning, let's just learn together. Okay, see you in the next video, maybe. Have a great day everyone, bye bye.